all new.
That these kinds of activities are not cost-free and that he will pay a price for continuing to operate in the way in which he has.
Iraq, the focus of confrontation, and Secretary of State Lawrence Eagleburger sends a clear warning to Saddam Hussein. Good morning, America. I'm Joan London.
And I'm Mike Schneider in for Charlie Gibson on this Wednesday, the 13th day of January. Some ominous developments apparently in the works this morning. It does appear quite clearly now that the UN and President Bush are losing patience with Saddam Hussein. Iraq is said to be violating the ceasefire agreement that was set down at the end of the Gulf War. Another provocation could be considered with Iraq's latest developments now. Iraq could be facing another military strike, we're being told. Question this morning is obviously how close are we, the United States, to a confrontation with them, Iraq? And we will ask the Secretary of State Lawrence Eagleburger, who leaves his job just 1 week from today. Also in this hour, we'll talk to the retired Colonel William Taylor, as we've done many times in the past, try to get a look at the military options available to Allied forces. Spencer's here with the weather. Spence?
All right, Mike, in Utah and many western states, the snow plows keep going and going and going and plowing and plowing and plowing. And with more snow in the forecast for today, these plows will have to continue going and going and going. We'll have details coming up.
All right, also this morning, Charlie Gibson goes behind the scenes with presidential spokesman Marlin Fitzwater. After serving 2 presidents, he offers some parting reflections on his days at the White House. Also a conversation with that young family who survived a week in Nevada's frozen wilderness. We heard about them earlier this week. We will talk with them. Also, Lisa McCree right now of ABC News overnight program World News Now has the news of the day. Lisa, good morning.
Good morning, Joan. Good morning, everyone. Iraq is defiant, and the U.S. is ready for a military strike against them this morning. When most Americans were going to bed last night, the Pentagon was saying Iraq will be attacked unless they come into immediate compliance with all UN resolutions and allied demands. Well, this morning, Secretary of State Lawrence Eagleburger says there is no sign of that compliance, and Saddam should be prepared for the consequences. You can hear more from Secretary Eagleburger in just a moment here on Good Morning America. About 100 Iraqis have once again crossed the border into Kuwait this morning for the 4th day in a row. And there is no sign that Saddam Hussein's anti-aircraft missiles are being moved from the 2 no-fly zones. Monitoring events in Washington this morning is ABC's Ann Compton. Ann, good morning. What is happening in Washington? Is there anxiety, is there anger, or just resolve?
Well, Lisa, about the only official in Washington who is not clearly warning the Iraqis of an impending attack is George Bush himself. The president has left it to his press secretary to talk about the fact that any attack would come simply without warning. And he's getting support from the incoming administration as well. In Little Rock, he got 100% support from spokesman George Stephanopoulos.
We've had close consultation. We feel we've been fully informed throughout this episode, and we expect that to continue. We will not tolerate any violation of the resolutions by Saddam Hussein, and it would be unwise of him to underestimate either President-elect Clinton's resolve to stand with President Bush in that policy.
The tea leaves on this one, Lisa, are not difficult to read. In fact, news organizations with news representatives on board the USS Kitty Hawk, the carrier with more than 80 aircraft, which would be in position to carry out any attack on Iraqi missiles. There's been what appears to be a news blackout for at least 24 hours. The Kitty Hawk is offshore, poised, and there is just no doubt in Washington this morning that action could come. It is daylight in Baghdad now, but if the Gulf War was any indication, the U.S. would wait until nightfall, which is later today.
President Bush took a lot of heat for not actually getting Saddam out of power at the end of Desert Storm. Is there any indication that they see this mission going beyond just the specific bombing of military targets and no-fly zones and stopping the Iraqis from crossing the border?
In a word, no. Certainly it galls President Bush that Saddam is still in power and President Bush is leaving power, but his principle had been, we'll go as far as the UN mandates, and that is to take out missiles and secure the area, not to get Saddam Hussein.
All right, Ann Compton this morning in Washington, D.C. Thanks, Ann. Iraq's foreign minister was quoted this morning as saying Iraq expects and is ready to respond to any allied attacks. A much different message than was being sent by Iraq's UN ambassador last night. He told ABC's Ted Koppel that Iraq still wants to try and talk this one out.
If they accuse us of being uncivilized, I think they should be civilized in trying to talk with us. If Iraq is saying we are ready to talk, which basically what I told the head of the council today, that we are ready to talk and to find ways and means out of this whole problems that we are facing.
In Iraq's morning paper, there's some familiar rhetoric, an editorial which says Iraq will take back Kuwait. We asked ABC's Jim Laurie in Baghdad about that just a few moments ago.
That is just standard propaganda. If you look, for example, at the morning paper, which is run by Saddam Hussein's son, he talks about the recent incursions into Kuwaiti territory in a very vague sense, but he says that that kind of operation does scare the Kuwaitis, and they still refer in their newspapers to Kuwait as being a province of Iraq.
Jim, the papers in Baghdad say this morning that Iraq's military is more prepared to deal with and fend off aggression than it was before the Gulf War. Do you have any sense of any enhanced military capability?
Well, all of the intelligence reports that I have read indicate that they are certainly not in better shape than they were before the Gulf War. They have regained some of their strength, perhaps, but they're nowhere near what they were 2.5 years ago, Lisa.
We know that so much of Iraq's foreign policy is brinksmanship and blustering. There apparently was an effort to guide foreign journalists this morning. Tell me about your visit to the baby milk factory.
That's correct, Lisa. It was rather ironic when we are talking about the possibility of airstrikes today against Iraq that the Iraqi ministry, which governs all of our activities here, took us off to the baby milk factory, which was bombed by the Americans just 2 years ago. That factory, it was said then, was actually a factory producing mustard gas or chemicals for chemical weapons. It has now been rebuilt, and the Iraqis say that they are going to start up operations for baby milk. A little sidebar, a journalist friend of mine who visited that factory about a year ago, when he went there, he was not allowed to take pictures. Why? Because they said, oh, this is Defense Ministry property. Lisa?
And that was ABC's Jim Laurie speaking with us this morning from Baghdad. The first American soldier has died in Somalia. A Marine private from Elizabeth, New Jersey was killed in this location when his patrol was ambushed last night. The men were patrolling the perimeter of Mogadishu Airport. A civilian working for the Army was killed last month when his vehicle hit a mine. In sports, Mario Lemieux, considered to be hockey's best player, is battling cancer. Doctors are treating the Pittsburgh star for Hodgkin's disease, but say they caught it in time and his chances for a complete recovery are excellent. In fact, he may be playing again in just 6 weeks. And Dennis Byrd of the New York Jets, partially paralyzed in a game 6 weeks ago, told reporters yesterday he now has movement in both arms and legs. And while doctors can't say he will walk again, Byrd and his wife Angela say they're confident that that day will come. It's a good note to end this news segment on. Back to Joan and Spencer.
All right, Lisa, I see you got the same memo as I did on the black and blue. So did Andy Compton, I noticed, during the news.
They're
but
black
you didn't,
well,
Mr. Glenn Platt.
You guys are
here.
black and blue from fighting your way to the top.
Oh.
I'm just coasting.
Well, fight your way up that map over there.
Well, we'll have to. Have you seen what's on those
It's
maps?
a mess.
Requires a fight.
Now, the question this morning remains, is the United States headed back to war in the Gulf? Earlier this morning, I spoke with the U.S. Secretary of State, Lawrence Eagleburger. He's in Paris. Mr. Secretary, if one reads the morning papers and hears the various different reports coming from the State Department and other branches of the U.S. government, one comes to the conclusion that the U.S. is poised for a military strike on Iraq. Is that a correct assumption, sir?
I think it's a correct assumption to say that the United States is poised. The White House has indicated there'll be no warnings. Saddam Hussein is acting in an insane manner and has been for some weeks. I would therefore say that it is quite possible that he will receive he will be the object of our affections, but I can't tell you when or how or if. That will depend upon the president.
Assuming that we're talking about this president, of course, we could assume that that would be a matter of days or less then, sir.
You can assume it would be within the next week, yes.
Let me ask for a question of opinion here, but what do you think Saddam Hussein's motivations are? Why is he doing what he has been doing?
I've asked myself that many times, and it's very difficult to give you an answer. I think, first place, somebody once described him as a man who thought a lot, but not necessarily very well. I think Part of it clearly is a challenge to Bush on his way out, and a suspicion probably that an outgoing administration can't react. It may also be, at least in part, because he feels weak at home and has to strengthen himself in public opinion. I don't want to make too much of that, because that may be nothing more than the wish being father to the thought. But by and large, I suspect it is basically that he has calculated, and I think wrongly, that he can push the UN and the coalition at this point in time and get away with it. I will say this, he's pushed now for the last several weeks, and we have warned him, but he has continued to push, so he may decide that all he's going to get is warnings.
Well, this morning, the latest word from Baghdad seems to be one of not only defiance, but of almost contempt, because a press officer for Saddam Hussein made it clear today that they feel that Kuwait is part of Iraq and shall be, as they put it, returned to Iraq. Do you take those threats seriously? Could we anticipate the Iraqis trying to move by force into Kuwait again?
Oh, I doubt that he will try to do that. You have to take the threat seriously in the sense that it indicates, I think, a certain degree of irrationality and hubris. I don't think he's foolish enough to try to move into Kuwait again, and if he did, he would clearly run into a hornet's nest. But I think there is clearly at this point in his mind a belief that he can challenge the coalition and the UN and probably get away with it.
We are hearing clear indications from U.S. allies such as Great Britain and France that they stand not alongside the United States but prepared to join in a military strike if that becomes a fact. What are you hearing, though, from the Arab countries that allied themselves with the U.S. during the Gulf War?
Well, again, I've been here in Paris now for 24 hours, and to some degree I'm out of touch, I suppose. But I think the best way I can answer the question is that in general, the Arab states that we have talked to recognize that this sort of behavior on Saddam Hussein's part cannot be permitted to continue. And if it is, they will be facing again the kind of situation they faced something over a year ago. And I think you will find that they're going to continue to be quite supportive of taking necessary action to put him back in his place.
Well, what would the objective, the ultimate objective of a U.S. military strike be here? Obviously, it doesn't seem likely that the U.S. is going to invade Iraq. We don't have the military forces over there to occupy the country right now. So what is it we're trying to do? Simply hurt the Iraqi military, send a message to Saddam? What?
Well, you know, number one, I don't want anything I say to imply that something is definitely going to happen. That is not in my hands. That's in the hands of the president. But having said that, the fact of the matter, I think, would be that if and when we were to decide to act, it would be to make it clear to Saddam and those around him that these kinds of activities are not cost-free and that he will pay a price for continuing to operate in the way in which he has. Now, what that would be or how it would be done is not in my hands. That's in the hands of the generals and the admirals. And again, I'm not saying anything will happen, but if it does, it will be, I suspect, a lesson that he will understand.
Time is running out, sir, but before we go, I want to switch gears and ask you a question about Somalia. We had a report of the first American serviceman being killed there. What does that do to the situation in Somalia? Does it change our impressions of the U.S. role and the difficulties therein?
No, and you know, again, when I answer the question, I want to make it clear that it's a tragedy that the young man died. Having said that, I don't think it changes either our opinion of what we must continue to do or the need to continue to do it. It is tragic that the man was killed. We all feel for his family, but that does not mean we should change what we're trying to do in Somalia.
Mr. Secretary, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Secretary of State Lawrence Eagleburger. 16.5 minutes past the hour right now. Of course, we'll continue to follow the situation with Iraq as it unfolds throughout the morning. But coming up next, Joan will be talking to a military analyst when Good Morning America continues.
Cereal with no sugar.
Managing the press, a lesson in survival from the outgoing White House spokesman Marlin Fitzwater in our next half hour.
Right now, it's 18 minutes after. We want to get more now on the developing situation in the Gulf. The U.S. is threatening action of some sort against Iraq in response to the movement of Iraqi missiles and Iraq's incursions across the border into Kuwait. So joining us right now from Washington is retired Army Colonel William Taylor. He is now the Senior Vice President of the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Good morning, Colonel.
Good morning, General.
You're standing there in front of a map. Perhaps you can show us where these no-fly zones are and why they were set up.
There are two of them set up under UN Resolution 688. One in the north, running east-west across the 36th parallel in northern Iraq to protect the Kurds who Saddam Hussein was methodically slaughtering. And one put in later down here at the 32nd parallel north to protect the Shias in the south, of which number he's killed about 10,000. We're trying to protect them. No Iraqi military aircraft can fly in the southern or the northern zone, and they cannot also or shouldn't be putting surface-to-air missiles there.
But Bill, down in the south there, in addition to going into the no-fly zone, they're actually crossing the border now into Kuwait. You want to explain how that border was redrawn after the war, right?
The border has been redrawn. It doesn't, the new border, which would be right about in here, that new border doesn't go into effect until day after tomorrow on the 15th.
Okay.
And Iraq is trying to challenge the UN authority to reset that border.
And there's a naval base on the south side of that border.
Right.
Now, what are they taking out of there?
It's right down here near Qasir. They've gone into warehouses that were formerly owned by the Iraqis, and where the UN has put Silkworm surface-to-air missiles and other military equipment under UN supervision to be later destroyed. Now, Iraq's is violating the border, going down, pulling those weapons out, which is a violation.
If we did a strike like this, what would the logistics be like? Who would be deployed?
All right, the first point is we have overwhelming high-technology military power in the region. Okay. Down here in the Persian Gulf, we've got the USS Kitty Hawk aircraft carrier battle group. That includes about 21 ships in the Gulf, down in the Gulf of Oman. There are two cruisers with Tomahawk cruise missiles. There are two submarines with Tomahawk cruise missiles also. Over in the Red Sea, we have 4 ships, including a cruiser with Tomahawks. Up in the eastern Mediterranean, we have the USS Saratoga carrier battle group. That has cruisers with Tomahawks, as well as destroyers and frigates. We can fly airstrikes out of Incirlik Air Force Base in Turkey, where we have F-15s, F-16s, F-111s. We can fly out of several airports down here, airfields in Saudi Arabia. This one at Dhahran, this one at Riyadh, this one at King Khalid, and this one down here in Taif. Overwhelming air power, about 200 high-tech aircraft.
You are describing military might, but how dangerous a mission could this be?
Well, there's no military operation that is risk-free. We have to understand that. There could be accidents, and some of these old Iraqi surface-to-air missiles, very low technology, just might by accident get through and knock down an aircraft. I'd rather doubt it, but you can't rule it out.
I mean, I read in press reports here, Iraq will regain Kuwait. Kuwait is part of Iraq. That is part of history, and world conspiracies cannot change that. Might we envelop into our plan at any point in time trying to take out Saddam Hussein?
You can be sure that there always is a plan to try to find, locate, and capture or kill Saddam Hussein. But that's a hard trick to pull off. He's pretty wily.
Colonel William Taylor, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
We'll be back.
Welcome back to CBS This Morning. I'm Harry Smith.
Good morning. I'm Paula Zahn.
He might have finished third, but he is sure not going away. In just a minute, we're going to find out what Ross Perot is up to.
Dr. Bob Arnott standing by live in Reno with quite a story. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning, Paula. Imagine being stranded for 8 brutal days, battered by one snowstorm after another with a 5-month-old baby. We'll have the Stoppel family story coming up.
All right, thanks a lot, Bob. Now time to turn our attention to the news headlines this morning. The U.S. carrier Kitty Hawk is on its highest state of readiness this morning as an airstrike against Iraq looks more likely. Iraqi raiders crossed the border into Kuwait for the 4th straight day this morning. U.S. Marines in Somalia are tightening security this morning in the wake of their first death since the start of Operation Restore Hope. Somali gunmen shot and killed a Marine yesterday near the Mogadishu airport. Hockey star Mario Lemieux has been diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease, a form of cancer. Doctors say the condition was discovered in its early stages and should not threaten his life or his career. He's supposed to be back at work in 4 to 6 weeks. 28 minutes before the hour. Time to check in with Mark McEwen now. How's the weather map look out there today?
Not too bad. This weather segment is sponsored. The billionaire businessman is calling on his volunteers to stay organized and keep their eye on 1996. Says Perot, he wants the new president to know there are millions of Americans ready to sacrifice for a sound, strong economy. And Ross Perot joins us. Good morning.
How are you?
Really good. You came out, put out the 1-800 number, said send me $15. What is the goal, primary goal of the organization you wanted?
Well, it's driven by the volunteers. Right after the election, from all 50 states, they said, let's stay together, let's stay organized. I thought they would be worn out at that point. And I said, well, let's wait till right after Christmas and we'll climb back in the ring. So it's driven by them. They really feel strongly that unless we stay together, they, as individual citizens, don't have a voice, and they're right.
Do you think that the people, the newly elected people this year, from the White House all the way down to the local dog catcher, got a new message this election?
No, there's no question about it, and they are wonderful people, and they are patriots, and they are people who want to serve their country. But until we reform our political system, it is so money-driven, and the only place to get that much money is from special interest and foreign interest, that our government is not being run for the benefit of the American people.
I wondered, after all was said and done, the election was over, whether or not and how you were going to keep the message alive. Do you personally want to do this?
Selfishly, let's just very narrow selfishly. I want to do it for my children and my grandchildren. That's selfishly. I want to. So this country's been very good to me. I don't have any unmet needs, but our country and our people have a lot of unmet needs. Now, the one thing, before I started all this, I love the American people, and the best part of this last year's experience was the association with them, and that love affair is more deep and more intense now than ever, and I want to do it for them.
This is not a new political party.
No, 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 no. We don't have 4 years to fool around with politics. We've got to go to work now. Now, the new people coming into the administration are saying very courageous things. Mr. Panetta yesterday. Say, but now again,
Talking about the deficit.
They're talking about the real problem. Now, the main thing, like in a health problem, let's assume you've got a little bit of cancer, you hit it right away. You don't wait 4 years. We've got major problems with our debt, our deficit, the country. We've got to move swiftly and surely now. We want a support group out there for Congress and the White House that makes it feasible.
To do the right thing. How is this organization going to affect this? How are you going to make your voice known?
Of the organization.
Right.
Yeah, my voice is not important. The organization's vote, that's where the vote is. I'm one vote.
Well, your volunteers would disagree with that.
No, but I'm one vote.
Right.
Each one of them, say the key is the vote. They'll be organized all the way down into their neighborhoods, certainly by the precinct level, certainly by the congressional district level, and we'll be able to display after the town hall meetings, and the $15 dues will be used to create the town hall and to give this feedback to Congress and the White House, and to make it very, very clear that the American people want their country put back on a sound financial footing, and we want to pass on the dream to our children.
Once you got back into it, there were many, many days when there wasn't a complimentary word in the press to be found about Ross Perot anyplace. And I wondered on a gut level if you just said, listen, I gave it my best shot. I did what I could do. I tried to introduce a message, and some people voted, some people didn't. Adios.
No. There are no rules in politics. There's no ethics. There's no morals. There's nothing. It's just down in the gutter. That's too bad, but that's the way we do it in our country. And certainly, I was willing to endure that for the country and for the people. On a personal level, nobody wants to fool with it.
We're going to take a break, but we're going to come back and we're going to talk about what you think is the most important thing the nation has to face in the next 365 days when we come back and talk with Ross Perot. Number, $15 a shot. The first night, what kind of response did you get?
Fascinating. The first hour, 66,000 calls. 80% of the people joined. 20% of the 80% joined from members of their family and other friends. The people who run telephone banks say they've never seen anything like it in terms of the percentage that joined. You know, a lot of people just call in and visit and then go think about it. So the desire is there. The people want, more than anything else, a government that comes from them. It comes at them now.
On that list of what people want, what do you think is the most single pressing problem the new administration has to face?
The number one problem in our government is reform. Now, you'd say, gee, I'm surprised.
It's not health care, it's not the deficit.
Well, you won't get those fixed until you reform the government. We've got to change our government from one where people get elected to come to cash in and become a foreign lobbyist at 6 and 7 figures after a few years, or cash in various other ways, to one where people come to serve. The people in Washington must come as the servants of the people. We've got to get rid of special interest financing, the big money around campaigns. All that could be done. You could have a meltdown in weeks if the American people really get organized. Then government comes back to them. That's number one. 1A, run this place. There's one ticket out of the hole we've put ourselves in. We've got $4 trillion in debt. We're spending more money every year. We're going into debt every year to an amount larger than the amount of money we spend to fight and win World War II. That's how big the deficit is. The way out of that is a growing, expanding job base. Right now, we're shrinking the job base. It's fashionable diplomatically to ship jobs overseas. That's rotten. We've got to stop that. Then we've got to have fair, shared sacrifice to rebuild our country. The people are ready. We've got to make sure the elected officials know it. We link arms and we go do it.
Let me do a couple of quickies then. Gas tax?
Well, gas tax, as I said, we got to do it, but there's a better idea. Now, I bring this up, Harry, because, see, as the new president, don't tie him to what he said in the campaign. If there's a better idea.
If there's a better idea.
If there's a better idea than gas tax, go to it. Don't get stuck with it.
You like the $10 tax on import oil, or?
I think, see, I had a person write me. Listen to the people.
Right.
Said, if we put a fee on imported oil, and if we use that to pay the national debt,
right.
American people say, hey, great, we're paying the debt. That'll drive down the interest, so on and so forth.
And all the wildcatters in Texas will be happy.
No, forget Texas. Forget Texas. The energy industry will be revitalized in our country, and we've lost more jobs in energy than we have in cars. Think of that. And finally, this is really important. Half our oil is imported now. If we ever got into a military situation where oil couldn't flow across the ocean, we couldn't run our country.
And it's the biggest strain on the balance of payments.
Yes.
Real quick, what do you think of what Clinton's done so far? And are you ready to give him space to do what he says he wants to do?
We want to give him constructive support to fulfill his campaign commitments. There's no question in my mind that he wants to. There's no question in my mind that he would like to. My deep concern is that once he stays inside the Beltway for 6 months, I've said you can put anybody inside the Beltway for 6 months and he'll change. So we've got to give him a conduit outside the Beltway. Now, he obviously loves the American people. Go back to the bus tours.
Right.
He cares about them, so on and so forth. We've got to make sure that two-way communication stays in place. Now, we would be doing him a terrible disservice just to do that for him.
Right.
Because we have what amounts to a weak presidency in our country. Congress cracks the whip. We've got to make sure that all those congressmen understand what the American people want. And then we're going to see some really good action take place in Washington.
You run for Senate?
No.
Okay.
Not running for anything. City limits. I'm running for city limits. But in the meantime, I'll be working hard on this.
Thanks for coming in. I do appreciate it.
Great to be with you.
Paula?
Thanks, Harry. 17 minutes before the hour. Coming up next, one family struggled to survive in a brutal winter storm. Dr. Bob Arnott has their...
Good morning, Paula. The Washoe Medical Center is the regional center responsible for treating cold-related injuries. And this winter, believe me, it's had its share of stories, but it's never had one quite like this. James Stopa desperately drove through a brutal, blinding blizzard to be with his mother when her mother died. He took along his wife and 5-month-old baby. But as they drove and one road after the other closed, they finally found themselves hip deep on a road to nowhere.
Well, we weren't smart enough to look on the key of the map to look at what type of road we chose to take. So after we were stuck, we looked at the map a little more closely and realized we were driving for quite a ways on gravel, on a gravel road.
So we stayed there overnight and found out where we were, and we weren't really thrilled because there wasn't too much around.
Doritos and cookies weren't the only source of food.
A small piece of fruitcake that a friend of ours had given us to bring up to the funeral for family. It was a good size. It was about this big, you know, but I didn't like fruitcake, so it was pretty gross.
But tasted pretty good by the end?
No, it never tasted good to me.
When rescuers failed to show up, they set out on foot to look for a town, a road, people, anything.
And we walked all day Saturday and into Sunday. And when I looked at my watch again, it was almost 29 hours later.
So you walked 29 straight hours. Jennifer, had you ever done anything like that before?
No. He pushed me along. You know, he was my inspiration. He kept me going.
How?
He just wasn't going to let me stay there. He kept saying, you know, when we get to the restaurant, or, you know, we had hopes that when we found the road, we were going to go straight to a restaurant and get something to drink and eat.
Yeah, we figured we'd stop at a restaurant first, get something to eat, and then go to a hotel, get a room, and then call the cops.
After their 29-hour marathon hike, the Stolpas took shelter near a cliff. James started a fire.
We made a fire out of the diaper bag. We burned a diaper bag and took everything out of, you know, everything we could find that would burn, and threw it in the diaper bag and on the diaper bag, around the diaper bag, and as much sagebrush as we could find, and, you know, lit it. And it burned really good for about 10 minutes, and that was about it.
Yeah.
You two had Army training. What about Clayton?
You know, when we put him in the garment bag, we were kind of worried about it. We felt guilty. We're like, God, you know, that seems cruel to zip him up and just drag him along. But, you know, we checked on him periodically, and he was toasty warm and just sleeping fine.
After long, desperate days, they found better shelter in a cave. But soon it became clear James and Jennifer would have to part.
It was, I think, the hardest thing I've ever done. I think that was the scariest thing about the whole, you know, the whole ordeal was saying goodbye to him and not knowing if it was going to be our last goodbye.
After nearly 2 more days of walking, James was finally spotted. But his rescuer wasn't quite sure what to make of him.
I'm telling this big story about how I've been stuck in the snow for 8 days and my family's in a cave. And I'm telling about coyotes and all this, and he doesn't know if I'm if I'm losing it or something.
So you've just been rescued after 8 long days in the snowy wilderness with your 5-month-old son. What do you want to do next?
Go to Disneyland? We want to go home. We'd like for things to go back to normal, and you know, I miss my apartment. You know, yeah. we miss home a lot. Our dog's at home. We miss our dog, and so can't wait.
The important lesson for anyone driving in a winter storm: make certain someone knows your route, update that route along the way, and always stay with